Good morning. I'm Pete Daly, CEO of the U.S. Naval Institute, and I welcome you to our conference, the Athena Conference, Heroines of the Past, Present, and Future. And I know some people are still getting collected here and have things in their lap, but I'd like to ask you to please stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Each year, the Naval Institute partners with the U.S. Naval Academy to explore an important historic theme through an applied history lens. We're deeply grateful to the William Ed Wood Foundation in Boston, who underwrites this important series and without whom we couldn't bring this to you. This year, the Naval Academy Women's Network approached us with an idea for the Athena Conference as part of this celebratory weekend that honors the 40th anniversary of women entering the Naval Academy. Throughout history, men and women of courage, of outstanding achievement, and notable qualities have been admired as heroes and heroines. Athena was revered as the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of war and peace, fearless in battle, and the friend of heroes. We're privileged to bring you trailblazers who will share their stories on obstacles and challenges they faced in the military and how they reached new heights. Young leaders will share their views on the sweeping changes for women that have reshaped the idea of women serving on the front lines. Industry and government leaders will share with us their lessons about making it to the top and what they see for the future. And we've had the pleasure in putting this conference together to work with a terrific team here at the Naval Academy to build the conference, including Commander Debbie Fermo, Lieutenant Commander Kelly Welsh, Ensign Malia Gilchrist, Ensign Christina Lanier, and Ensign Matt Kane. We're also very grateful for the help we're getting from the midshipmen today who are part of the Naval Academy's Women's Network, who are helping make all this happen in execution. And we extend a very special welcome to all the midshipmen attendees who are here today. You represent our future. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the 62nd Superintendent of the United States Naval Academy, a 1981 Naval Academy grad. Vice Admiral Ted Carter was designated a Naval Flight Officer in 1982 and attended the Naval Fighter Weapons School, Top Gun, in 1985. He spent extensive time at sea and has flown over 125 combat missions in Bosnia, Kosovo, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He's accumulated more than 6,000 flight hours in the F-4, the F-14 Tomcat, and the F-18 Hornet, and has landed on 19 different aircraft carriers. He said today one of them was the French aircraft carrier Clemenceau. He's completed 2,016 carrier landings, and the fact that he's done that and is still here with us is itself notable, but it's a record among all aviators who are designated active or retired. He served as commanding officer of the USS Camden, AOE-2, the USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, and commanded the Enterprise Carrier Strike Group on that carrier's last deployment. And she was retired after 51 years in 2012, and Ted Carter was the last strike group commander. Previously, he was the 54th president of the Naval War College in Newport. So let's give a big welcome to the Soup, Vice Admiral Ted Carter.
All right, brigade seats. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Alumni Hall. Welcome to the United States Naval Academy. Welcome to Annapolis, Maryland. Whether this is your first time coming here or you've been here for many, many years, I want to say welcome. That is my primary job here this afternoon. You know, on 6 July 1976, 81 brave young women walked through the gates of the United States Naval Academy to enter in to the class of 1980, along with their counterparts at West Point and Air Force Academy. It was a remarkable day. They represented about 6% of that original class when they took the oath of induction. And a little over 4 years later, 55 of those pioneering gender integration women of the class of 1980 graduated to become ensigns and second lieutenants in the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. I believe we have half of the class here. I'd ask the class of 1980 to please stand. It's really pretty remarkable, and as we think about all of the women that graduated, and from my view, those that were in the first 10 years of graduating here in the Naval Academy, all of them went through amazing steps, and here we are 40 years later, and I think about those 81 women that came in with the class of 1980, and here we were graduating the class of 2016 this year, and 276 women were graduated in that class out of a class of 1,076. 25% of that class. But beyond the numbers matter, of course, but beyond the numbers is what they did. 40 years of women. We've had a brigade commander. We've had a woman finish first in the class. What we'd never seen is in the first and second semester, 2 women led the brigade of midshipmen 2 times in a row. It was rather remarkable. The academic performance of the women was unprecedented in the class of 2016. It can be measured in their GPAs, but we also look at some of the high-end scholarship programs. Of all of the high-end scholarship programs, the UK scholarships, the Rhodes, all of those, women made up nearly 50% with only 25% of the class. So a Rhodes Scholar, a Mitchell Scholar, a Truman Scholar, a Gates Cambridge Scholar, all women in the class of 2016. And maybe most important of all, with the lifting of combat exclusion, there is no job that a woman graduating from any service academy can't do for the first time ever. So welcome back to all of our alumni. It's great to see you here and be here. This has been in the planning for a long time. I can just feel the energy in this room. It's hot outside today. It's a real end of summer. And I hope you get a chance to walk around our very small 338-acre campus. You know, we were founded on October 10th, 1845. We stole 10 acres of land from the United States Army. This theme keeps on rolling. And as you look at us today, it's really a jewel, an absolute jewel of a piece of property. Bancroft Hall, largest dormitory in the world, takes up 10% of the whole campus at 33 acres. Rickover Hall, the last academic building ever put up on the campus in 1975. And in 6 short weeks, we are about to announce a groundbreaking for the next and likely last major academic building to ever be built at the United States Naval Academy. Now, I know a lot of you know we're very diverse in what we have in terms of academic disciplines or majors here. We've had a cyber major here now for 4 years. Class of 2016, the first to graduate with that. Next year, we're going to have an organization named ABET come out and accredit us in a cyber operations major. We'll be the first academic institution in the country to achieve that accreditation, should we make it through there. And to do all that, you want to have a building to put it. So in 2015, Congress appropriated $120 million to us to start putting up a building. March 30th of this year, we signed a contract. And now we are in the design phase, and on October 21st, we're going to go through a groundbreaking of a 206,000 square foot, 5-story building that'll be nestled in between Nimitz and Rickover Hall. This will be a significant building. It will be, our vision is to classify this as a smart building, meaning that the climate, the air, everything that happens in that building will be part of the Internet of Things. It will be connected in a way that no other building here has at the Naval Academy. It will have high-tech laboratories, facilities, and a special compartmented information facility, or SCIF, where we can teach at the top secret level. It will be the first of its kind to be built. Our vision is to have this thing operational by the end of 2019, so not inconsequential that the class of 2020, 40 years from the class of 80 graduating, will be taking classes in that building for the first time when they go through their second semester of their senior year. And today, the Chief of Naval Operations and the Secretary of the Navy have given me the honor, the authority to announce the naming of this building. Ladies and gentlemen, the name of our Cyber Studies building will be Rear Admiral Grace Brewster Murray Hopper. Now, this will mark not only the first academic building to ever be named for a woman on the United States Naval Academy, it also is the first building to be named after a woman on any service academy. So this is not an insignificant moment in service academy history. Now, I could stand here and go through about a 20-minute discussion on just the basics of who Admiral Grace Hopper is, but to just hit two wave tops. First of all, she started serving in the United States Navy in World War II. So 1943, she enlisted into the Navy, served as a lieutenant, getting her commission after having already earned her PhD in 1937 at Yale, one of the first women to achieve that in computer science. After World War II, she worked at Harvard to build the Mark I, Mark II, Mark III computers. She was the pioneer that determined that we could put English language into computer languages. And those languages were taught right here at the Naval Academy. Fortran, COBOL, all of us know what those are. Those were designed by Grace Hopper. When she retired in 1986 at the age of 79 years old, that put her in company as not only the oldest serving member of the United States Navy in 1986, there have only been a handful of flag officers who have retired at that age on active duty. So listen to this lineup. And by the way, Admiral David Glasgow Farragut, the first four-star in the United States Navy, died when he was 69. She was 79. But all fleet admirals keep their rank till the day that they die. So Chester Nimitz and Admiral Leahy, those were two. Rickover was the other, and Grace Hopper. That is the company that we're talking about. This is the type of pioneering spirit. And at her retirement, the thing that she said she wanted to be remembered for, more than developing any computing language, more than all of the groundbreaking training and education things that she did, she said, I want to be known as a person that wanted to train the young men and women of the United States Navy. So today, her vision, her legacy will follow through in this field of dreams of cyber for the Admiral of the Cyber Seas, Admiral Grace Hopper. So it just gets better and better. My next job here is to introduce our first keynote speaker. And this is pretty exciting. We can go ahead and put the Naval Academy logo back up, please. We are so honored to have so many wonderful speakers here today, but General Ann Dunwoody is clearly one of the groundbreaking pioneers of women in service that have ever served. She's a native of Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And if you think that sounds odd, it's because she has a legacy of service and family that is pretty hard to beat. Her great-grandfather, her grandfather, her father, her brother, her sister, her nephew, her niece, and her husband all served in either the Army or the U.S. Air Force. Pretty remarkable. She commissioned coming right out of college, out of the state of New York system in Cortland in 1975, and immediately got her jump wing. So she did something that a lot of us, me included, I always didn't want to jump out of airplanes. She did that in 1975. Imagine what that was like. Went into logistics and served in command at every single lever that you could do in the United States Army. In fact, just about every time she was in command, she broke some new ground. On 14 November of 2008, she was not only appointed, but she was promoted to a full 4-star general in the United States Army, the first woman to ever wear 4 stars in the Department of Defense as she took over the U.S. Army Materiel Command. Now, for a lot of us here in the Navy here, we think about logistics and how important it is. When you think about the United States Army in 2008, we're talking about a force of 69,000 officers, enlisted, civilians, men and women. It's the largest command the U.S. Army had had in logistics in its history. And during General Dunwoody's time, she deployed and redeployed forces of such magnitude to Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Haiti, and Japan. It was the largest deployment of forces ever in U.S. history, second only to World War II. She retired from the United States Army on 15 August 2012, just shy of 4 years serving as a 4-star general. Today, she's the president of First to 4 and serves on the board of directors of L3 Communications, Republic Service, and Logistics Management Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to General Ann Dunwoody, United States Army, retired.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm awesome. Oops, click on my own. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, it's great to be here, and good afternoon. It's such an honor and pleasure for me to join you here at Annapolis for this historic celebration and to talk to you a little bit about leadership in my book, A Higher Standard. First, I have a confession to make. Well, maybe not a confession, more of a family secret. Most people who know me, and as you just heard, I have 4 generations of West Pointers in my family. But the truth of the matter be known, my father really wanted to go to Annapolis. He applied, he was accepted, and his dad, who was a West Pointer, said no way, or words to that effect, and he enlisted a year and then went to West Point, as did my big brother, Buck. Now, while Annapolis was not open, or any other service academies, when I joined the military, I'm not sure even if it was that I would have tried to consider it. So let me also start by thanking the women who signed up and graduated 4 decades ago. Some of you I had the honor of serving with, and I am so proud of you because it is you who made believers out of non-believers. It was you that walked through previously closed doors and provided the gift of opportunity to those who would follow. So please join me in a round of applause for that class. Now, unlike many of you, my journey through life has been one where challenges turned into opportunities. And I think my book and my story fits nicely with a lot of the conversations you're having here at Annapolis today. I truly appreciate the warm welcome, Admiral Carter. He did forget to mention one thing. He forgot to mention that 5th grade was the best 3 years of my life. But my sincere hope today is that my brief remarks and my story as told in the book will inspire people to dream big and find ways to make a difference. And I know Annapolis has a legacy of finding ways to make a difference. After all, virtually everyone in this room raised their hand and took an oath. And I can think of no greater contribution to our country than that. Now, the truth be known, I never had any intention of writing a book. But after I retired, everywhere I went, people kept asking me, when are you going to tell your story? They wanted to know why. Why was I the first woman to be promoted and selected for 4 stars? But the big question I always got was, how did you, as a woman, manage to claw and fight your way to the top in a tradition-laden, rigid profession like the United States Army? And it probably would have been easier, and maybe expected by some, that I write a book on how I, like Wonder Woman, kicked and scratched my way to the top, leaving male egos in my wake, breaking down doors and busting glass ceilings. But the reality is that my journey was more about leadership than gender. My journey to the top was far more interesting than a career of struggling or fighting my way through the ranks. And that's why I knew I had to try to tell my story. Now, I didn't want to write a biography or a memoir or a diary. I wanted to write about leadership. I wanted to write about the leadership strategies that worked for me, supported by stories and vignettes in my life that I believe contributed to my success, with the hopes that others would find them useful as well. Because I believe good leaders never stop learning. Now, my journey wasn't defined by a list of top 10 secret things that if you do these, you'll automatically be a great leader. Matter of fact, I don't believe there's any magic recipe for leadership. If there were, the leadership recipe would be posted on all the walls in Annapolis, and voila, everyone who walked through these halls would be automatically a great leader. This book is also not about how to become a general. I don't even know if I could write a book like that. Matter of fact, I remember asking my husband, Craig Brochie, Mr. Wonderful over there, if ever in his wildest dreams did he imagine that I would ever be a 4-star general. And he said, "Baby, you've never been in my wildest dreams." Now, you know he didn't really say that, or they had a bullet hole in his head instead of a smile on his face. Well, as you heard earlier, I do come from a family of 4 generations of West Pointers. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, and my big brother, Buck, are all West Pointers. So people naturally assumed that I had Army green blood flowing through my veins, and that I would join the Army to continue our family tradition. But for me, it was sports, not soldiering. That was my passion. It was my thing. You remember the song, "I Was Country Before Country Was Cool" by Barbara Mandrell? Well, I wanted to be a female athlete before being a female athlete was cool. When I grew up, I loved to be outdoors, whether it's kickball, tetherball, dodgeball, you name it. And then when I was in high school and college, it was tennis, gymnastics, and track. And this was before Title IX. There were no scholarships for women. We just did it for the love of the game. But I can assure you that I learned as much from losing as I did from winning. And I learned about building teams and building confidence. So as far back as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was be a physical education teacher and a coach. Well, a funny thing happened during my junior year in college. This was right at the end of the Vietnam War, about 1974, and the Army was aggressively trying to get women in its ranks. And this particular program, if you got accepted and were qualified, you got a commission as a second lieutenant, you had a 2-year commitment, and they were going to pay you $500 a month during your senior year in college. $500 a month was a lot of money back then. And I figured I could stand on my head for 2 years, so I signed up. knowing full well that was just going to be a 2-year detour en route to my teaching and coaching profession. Well, after my 2-year stint was up, I remember telling my dad, you know, I really like being a soldier, and I love leading soldiers. And I'm going to keep on doing it as long as I love what I'm doing and I can make a difference. And that's exactly what I tried to do, one job at a time. So my initial 2 years turned into 5, turned into 10, and yes, 38. But what I realized is that I really did end up fulfilling my childhood dream. I just did it in a different profession and a different battlefield. I ended up coaching thousands of young men and women in a very physically demanding profession, the United States Army. Now, for my book, I chose the title A Higher Standard for several reasons. First, many folks don't realize that less than 1% of the American population will ever serve. In fact, that you're here tells me that you're all very special. And few Americans realize that men and women who do wear their uniform are held to a higher standard. As you know, in the military, we take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's pretty heady stuff for an 18-year-old, or anyone else for that matter. And not everyone realizes that we're also held to a strict code of conduct that governs our behavior 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And of course, in the military, you have to meet standards for just about everything you do, how fast you run, how you wear your uniform, how many push-ups you can do, how many times you can hit a target. But a fact that you might find surprising, and I hope you find disturbing, is that less than 30% of the males in this country between the ages of 18 and 25 even qualified to come into the military. Whether it's because they're not high school graduates, have criminal records, drug addictions, they're obese, or have other medical conditions, less than 30% are even qualified to come into the military. And that's not an Army or Navy problem, that's a national problem. But more importantly, the reason I chose the title A Higher Standard is because when I joined the military back in 1975, I just assumed as a woman that I would have to exceed the standards in order to be accepted into the ranks. And that's exactly what I tried to do. But what I realized during my journey is that all the good leaders that I looked up to, all the good leaders that I respected, held themselves to a higher standard and encouraged their subordinates to do the same. Now, in the Army, I always believed the difference between leaders and soldiers who just tried to meet the standards and those that tried to exceed the standards was kind of like the difference between a C student and an A student. Except in the military, lives depend on our performance and our leadership. In the military, we want the best soldiers on our team. It's a dangerous profession. A students don't ruin the curve in the Army, they enhance it. And I don't care what kind of organization you belong to or you're in, a team full of C students, you're probably going to have an average or sub-average team. If you got a team of A students, people are trying to exceed the standards, you're probably going to have a high-performing organization. Now, one of the seemingly simple lessons I learned as a brand new second lieutenant was to never walk by a mistake. I was taught if you walk by a mistake, you just set a new lower standard. If you see something wrong and you don't make an on-the-spot correction, that new lower standard becomes the new standard in the eyes of the offender. In the Army, a mistake can be something as simple as correcting a soldier who's not wearing his or her uniform correct. But it could be something more serious, like correcting soldiers who don't maintain their combat equipment to standard. A poorly maintained weapon in training could lead to a malfunction. A poorly maintained weapon in combat could be fatal. And in the military, failure to enforce those standards can lead to a slippery slope. Poor performance, people getting hurt, or even worse, unnecessary loss of lives. But this principle doesn't only apply to the military. Think about your own activities. Have you ever seen someone who spends more time on Facebook or tweeting or surfing the web than working or studying? Well, if this behavior is tolerated, the behavior becomes the new standard, performance goes down, and leaders start wondering what the heck's wrong with this organization. But the same is true in big business. Just think about it. If the people at General Motors had identified and fought to correct the defective ignition switch, how many lives would have been saved? How many millions of dollars would have been saved that were spent on corporate damage control, recalls, and lawsuits? What if the Veterans Administration in Arizona had highlighted the appointment backlog problem instead of trying to cover it up and use phony metrics to make themselves look good? They could have helped more veterans than hurt. What if the people at Volkswagen would have reported the conspiracy instead of supporting the cover-up? Think how many billions of dollars could have been saved. The last number I saw was $18.5 billion in the US alone. Now I could go on, but you read the same headlines I do. All of these companies have had leadership shakeups because good leadership starts at the top, and good leaders could have made a difference. Now, it might surprise you to know I never worked for a woman. I worked for men who either believed in me or didn't. And during much of my career, everywhere I looked, I saw mostly male white men. There are a few minorities, but it wasn't a very diverse crowd. Well, 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to accompany the Chief of Staff of the Army, General Dennis Reimer, to one of our high-tech communications command in New Jersey. Mostly scientists, engineers, and computer experts. I was Lieutenant Colonel then, and was there to take notes for the Chief's trip report. When we walked into the conference room, I couldn't help but notice that everyone sitting around the table were white males. The only women in the room besides myself were serving refreshments and coffee. And I thought, what's wrong with this picture? Well, the year before last, I had the opportunity to visit my friend Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook and author of runaway bestseller Lean In, where she had gathered over 1,500 women who are now writing software and engineering programs for Facebook for a leadership conference. 1,500 women from around the world in one room. And I couldn't help to think about the stark difference between 0 women back in that conference room in 1994 to a room filled with 1,500 women now in the engineering and software business. And I thought, we have come a long way. But have we come far enough? I don't think so. I think we still have too many people that think diversity is about adding one of these or one of those to the roster or the team. In my view, diversity isn't just about race, gender, nationality, or color. The real power of diversity comes from the power of diversity of thought. Your organization, any organization, can be improved by recruiting the best and brightest from all walks of life. Team members who think differently than you. People who bring a different perspective or perhaps different ideas to the problem-solving and decision-making problem than you. Have you ever sat around a conference table and looked around and everyone looks pretty much the same? Same education, same political views, even the same skin color and gender? Well, it happens. It happens in the military, it happens on Wall Street, and can happen to any organization where you're not willing to invest in the power of diversity of thought. Now, I was blessed many times throughout my career when leaders selected me to be the first woman to join their team. Not the last, but the first. And I know many were surprised when I didn't always agree with them and offered a different perspective. But that is what the power of diversity of thought is all about. Now, as you can imagine, I didn't just skip along the yellow brick road in the land of Oz and wake up one morning as 4-star general. I had obstacles, I had roadblocks, but I also had a lot of people that were willing to support and help me along the way. And I think those obstacles, those roadblocks, and people who are willing to help exist in every organization and in every business environment. I've worked for all kinds of leaders, and I'm sure most of you have too. Some good, some bad, and many in between. And so usually when faced with adversity, negativity, or bullying, the easiest thing to do is attack or retreat and draw back completely. I can assure you not everyone was happy to see Ann Dunwoody when I reported into a new duty station. Sometimes it was the same old, what on earth are we going to do with this woman? When I first reported into the 82nd Airborne in 1988, I had a master's degree. I'd just come out of the Command General Staff College. I was a senior paratrooper. I had 2 successful company commands under my belt, and I was so fired up. Until I found out I was going to be the first and only female field grade in the division, and that some of the senior leaders were trying to reassign me to another outfit. Well, when their plot didn't work to get rid of me, they gave me a menial job because they really did not know what to do with me. In their minds, I couldn't possibly trust a woman with one of these career-enhancing jobs. And so they gave me the job as a division property book officer, and I was replacing a major who'd been passed over for lieutenant colonel. All the good jobs, the career-enhancing jobs like XO, Battalion S3, or my June job of being the division parachute officer, were given to males that had lesser qualifications than mine. This was the only time in my military career that I thought seriously about leaving. But I truly believed that by staying on the moral high ground, by not lowering my own standards or stooping to counterproductive tactics like name-calling or innuendo or gossip, that I would make believers out of non-believers. That worked for me. I ended up serving 6 consecutive years in the 82nd and ultimately became the first woman to command a battalion in that storied division. So another lesson I want to share is believe in yourself. Never give up. Be the best you can be, and never let others dissuade you from something that you're passionate about. Just think about it for a minute, whether you're a male or a female. If we let others unduly influence or make decisions for us, they win. If we let others drive us away from something we're passionate about or something we believe in, they win. Were there times when it had been easy to run in the face of adversity? You bet. Were there times when I was afraid, frustrated, or angry? You bet. But at the end of the day, I would ask myself the question, if I quit, if I don't continue to try and make a difference and take the easy road, then who's the real winner and who's the real loser. And for me, the seemingly unsurmountable challenges turned into opportunities. It was all about leadership. Now, there's another myth I'd like to dispel. Good leaders are not invincible. We like to think we are. In the military, we want our young men and women to think they can do anything. Take that hill, climb that rope, jump out of that plane, you name it. And if there's ever any sniveling going on, we just tell them, suck it up. But the reality is, we're all just human beings. When I was a young captain, I was going through a rough period in my life. I was in a bad relationship. I had a job, a crummy job. I hated it. I was kind of like the welcome wagon, a Walmart greeter for new soldiers coming into Europe. It's an important job. It just wasn't a good fit for me. I was living in this little teeny house where the bathroom looked something like one you see on an airplane. And I was stationed overseas, where I had no family members and very few friends that I could talk to them about. Well, I remember I started feeling real sick in the morning, and I finally went to go see the doctor. And he ran some tests, and then he said, "Are you under any stress?" I almost had to laugh, telling him I had the easiest job in the community, and I was a senior parachuter, and I could handle anything. Then the doc told me that I had a bleeding ulcer and I better start taking care of myself. Well, I got on the first plane, flew back home to talk to my parents about getting out of this bad relationship and telling them how unhappy I was. They were so supportive, and I was so relieved. When I got back to Europe, I interviewed for another job, got a great job, and I moved my dog, Gypsy, and I into a brand new house. Life for Ann Dunwoody was good again, and I was back to being the old Ann Dunwoody. But the lesson here is simple. When you have complex issues, you need to have someone to talk to. You are not invincible, and guess what? No one is. Financial troubles, relationship problems, illnesses, death are nothing to scoff at. You need to have someone you can share the things, good things and bad, a significant other, a trusted friend, or even a family member. Don't try to keep it bottled up inside like I did. We are just humans, and our bodies know. Ulcers, loss of hair, skin rashes, and worst of all, that feeling that hurting yourself can be a viable option. Remember, every person counts. Every person has something to contribute in some way. Another lesson I like to talk about is the ongoing debate, can women have it all? This can apply to men as well, but my point here is simple. Don't let society define what having it all means for you. Today, having it all seems to be defined by some, the perfect marriage, both husband and wife, very successful, 2.5 kids, one's a captain of the football team, one's a cheerleader, you know the deal. Well, I never had my own kids. I always thought I would. And today, I don't know if I'd be where I am if I did, but I'll never know. But I feel like I've had it all. Got a wonderful husband, 2 sons from his previous marriage, 4 beautiful grandkids, and a wonderful life. So only you can define what having it all means for yourself. There are other leadership lessons in my book, but the thought I'd like to leave with you today is that most people, like yourselves, really do want to make a difference. And the good leaders that I know want to inspire people so they don't just settle for getting by, but encourage them to excel and to be A students and exceed the standards. No matter what you lead, a major company, a team, a church group, or even the United States Naval Academy, being a good leader makes all the difference. Good leaders don't walk by mistakes, they deal with it. Good leaders treat people with dignity and respect, and they embrace the power of diversity of thought. Good leaders tackle challenges. They don't turn away trying to avoid them. And good leaders try to live and lead by a higher standard. Thank you for being here this afternoon and for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you on my book. It's been an honor to be here with you on this beautiful day in this historic spot for the 40th anniversary celebration, women preparing to take the helm of our Navy and here at Annapolis. Please keep our deployed men and women in your thoughts and prayers. Pray for their success and their safe return. God bless you, and finally, God bless America. Now, normally, I would end my remarks with, "Go Army, beat Navy." But since it's been 15 years since we won against Navy, I'm just going to say, "Go Army." Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thanks very much. Thank you.
Take a couple questions.
Sure. Just the easy ones.
We asked the audience if we've got a few minutes here. If you want to ask a couple questions of General Dunwoody, please use the mics. They're set up in the center in the mezzanine. And please identify yourself, ask a question, and we have time for about 8 to 10 minutes. General Dunwoody said she only wants the good questions.
We watched the debate last night. Yes, please.
What's the funniest thing that ever happened to you?
Okay, so I'm going to airborne school, and they're just starting to let women go in to jump out airplanes, officers, that is, so I'm in the first wave of that. And I'm fit, phys ed teacher, coach, marathons, and I'm thinking, this is so exciting. The Army's actually going to pay me to jump out of airplanes. This is cool. Well, I get down there, and I find the black hat instructors weren't as excited about women coming to the airborne school as I was. And we were doing our little training, and I had blonde hair up in a bun. And the black hats came up to me and they said, "I'm sorry, those barrettes and those bobby pins, they're a hazard to jumping. And you're gonna either have to cut your hair or, you know, that just won't satisfy me." I'm like, God, you gotta be kidding me. So there's only 3 other women. One had long hair, she cut it. One had short hair, and me. And I refused to succumb to this because they really didn't want you to graduate. And they really didn't want you there, but they wanted you to look like them. Cut your hair. So I took a thing of masking tape, and I taped my hair up, and it looked like a beehive. It was ugly. Put my helmet on, but they couldn't. I never heard another word about it, and so we continued on with long hair.
Ma'am?
Yes. Oh, there you are.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Midshipman Chris Goodale from 19th Company and class of 2017. My question for you, ma'am, is this. From your perspective, what are some of the challenges that women still face in the military in their path ahead?
That's a great question. And, you know, as far as we've come, and I look back on my almost 4 decades in the Army, and I look back about how far the doors had opened. And when I joined, it was still the WAC Corps, Women's Army Corps, and then they disbanded it, and we started our journey with the integration of women into the military. And so for me, every time we had a new opportunity, and it was to fight, not to be the secretary or the cook, but to get in and do the same kind as your male counterparts did in the branch. So I spent a career of looking back and seeing how far the doors have opened. My niece was a class of 80 in the Air Force. You know, I thought jumping out of airplanes was cool. She's an A-10 pilot. We just had 3 women graduate to Ranger School. I mean, the doors do continue to open, and I'm so proud of these women that continue to push the limits. Now, the challenge is on the human side, and there's humans are involved, so you have people with biases still. You have people, and I talk about in my book, I kind of work for 3 kinds of leaders, I thought. advocates who believed in you, supported you, and did things for you behind the curtain. You didn't even know they were making a difference in your assignment. You have what I call Janus facers or patronizers. And they'll say, hey, midshipman, you're a great guy. That's to your face. And then my hair is like, you know, he's not worth it, and you know what. And then the people that just don't like you because this is a man's world, you don't belong here. And I always go at the leadership lessons, not who you work for, but what you do about it. Stay on the moral high ground. Don't lower your standards, and you'll be surprised. You'll make believers out of non-believers. And that's what happened to me. Doesn't mean I didn't have some knuckleheads I worked for. I did. I had book throwers, I had screamers, I had all that stuff. But you don't lower your standards. You just keep the moral high ground, and you can make believers. The other thing, and it's always in this whole thing on the sexual assault, it's a male on male. It's, you know, it's all kinds of it's so hard for me. Why it's so hard to mill. It's a national issue. It's on colleges. It's an industry. But we wear this uniform. We take this oath, and you don't expect people in the military to be doing these kinds of things to other people in the military. And then when you see high up in the higher levels, it's even like a kick in the gut. So we have to be on the lookout as leaders. And you have to investigate, you have to take appropriate action, and then you have to follow up that the action is appropriate for the offense if found guilty.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Okay, doke.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Midshipman First Class Abby Purdue.
Hooah.
As a strong female leader in the military, I'm sure you utilized your femininity as an asset to your authentic leadership. And with this in mind, how do you feel about some of our military leaders trying to create sort of a general, neutral military? And one specific example would be gender-neutral uniforms.
First of all, and I'll tell you this, and I say it in the book, I always thought of myself as a soldier. I never thought of myself as a female soldier. That does not mean you have to give up your femininity to be a soldier. You want to be professional. And that was throughout my career. I didn't say, oh, I can't lift my toolbox. Can you get this? Can you, and you see it. Can you get that for me? I can't do it. You got to exceed the standard. You got to carry your weight. I don't like the term gender neutral, and I published an article in the AUSA. They asked me to write about it because it sounds like gender neutral is kind of a compromise. That's what it sounds like to me, that especially for combat, we want gender neutral standards. Well, wait a minute. If the standard was this, are you bringing these down or raising these up? So I personally, but that's just Ann Dunwoody. So I don't like the term gender neutral. There's standards. You either meet the standards, exceed the standards, or you can't do the business. I don't know if you just heard they had it's about a month ago, the firemen, they just graduated a woman who couldn't meet the standards. Said, well, not everyone has to meet the standards. Really? You want that person coming to your house when you have a fire? No. So the standards are the standards, and what they've been wrestling with is we didn't really have identified the requirements and the standards required for all these new specialties that they're opening up. We had anecdotal ones. 82nd, you had to do a 12-mile road match. You had a 4-mile run. Why? Because we were the 82nd. It wasn't tied necessarily to a specific skill set. So now they're doing all this homework analysis of what those requirements are. They call it gender neutral. I don't like that. But what you really want, what you really hope, is that we don't compromise the standards in order to make it a social experiment where everyone can do everything. It's too dangerous of a profession. And if we have to lower those standards in order to incorporate more folks in the business, we will fail.
Thank you, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Ma'am, up here on the left. Oh, on the left. Hi, ma'am. Midshipman 4th Class Speranzo, 15th Company. Who would you say is the biggest role model in your life and why?
That's an easy one, and it seems like a cop-out, but that was my mother. And I told you I never worked for a woman in the military, but I came from a values-based family. My dad, a war hero, he's the greatest generation icon for sure. We graduated from West Point in 43, so I had a pair, but I will get back to my mom. So dad, World War II, injured, Korean War, injured, Distinguished Service Cross, Vietnam, 3-war veteran, lived to 96, and I was blessed to have a guy like that. So growing up, he was my physical role, my medals, the funny, coming to work all the time, gone a lot. And what I realized later in my life, watching my mother, and all she did, she raised 6 of us on her own, devout Catholic lady, the most unselfish person in the whole wide world, most optimistic person, and I never heard glass ceiling in our house, never gonna rain on our parade. We're gonna have, you can do anything you want. Just put your mind to it, work hard. And so as I was getting old, I thought, if I could be more like my mother, I would be a better officer and person and human being. So she has always been my real role model.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi.
Hi.
I'm up here. Oh, sorry. My name is Cabrini Pack from Catholic University of America. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. In 2003, Paul Higgate released an edited edition called Military Masculinities. And in one of the essays, there was a chapter that reflected on how weakness and failure was feminized in the American military forces. So my question to you is, to what degree did you encounter this in your own climate? And if you did encounter this, how did you adapt and or potentially change perceptions with regards to how weakness and or failure might be feminized?
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotyping that still goes on, but I'll repeat this theme, and it sounds easy. I love sports. I was very athletic. I could outrun most of the men on Ardennes. I could do as many push-ups as they could do. And so, in the military, when you can exceed the standards or run faster, they don't go, oh, that's a bossy lady, or she's weak. They go, wow, we want her on our team. And so the way, it's sad that the physical dimension is more important sometimes than the mental dimension in our profession, but it is an important part. And when you're getting into like the 82nd, where everyone's hooah and macho and if you can't run that, well, you might have a PhD, but they don't care. So you have got to be able to meet those standards, exceed those standards. When you do, you make believers out of non-believers because they want you on their team. They want the best, quote, athlete, soldier, airman, you fill in the blank. But I found that if you could demonstrate that you were as good as or better, that people wanted you on their team and they put you in those leadership positions.
Ma'am, my name is Laurie Capon, and I'm a member of the great class of 1989.
Ooh-ah.
The 10th
You're
class.
just a youngster, my gosh.
Ma'am, first of all, I want to thank you for your service. My question is about leadership in a broader sense. So you talked about roadblocks and obstacles, which in the military we honestly have no choice but to plow on and overcome. But the question, when you take those leadership styles into the business world, sometimes those roadblocks and obstacles are meant to divert us in other directions. So in your experience transitioning from military leadership to business leadership, what do you think are some of the hallmarks where roadblocks and obstacles are meant to divert us in other directions instead of propel us simply to overcome them?
Well, it's interesting, in your military, you don't get to pick your bosses, you don't get to pick your jobs, they assign you and you work and you figure it out. When I retired, people started asking me about coming on boards. I went to interview the company, the CEO, and I think it's a two-way interview. You like them, and they like you. And not all companies are equal. Some want your Rolodex, some want, one of these at your table, and some truly want to leverage your experience and your professionalism. And so I just took my time and ended up on I've been interviewed with 15 or so, picked the ones, I knew the ones that I didn't want to be part of that quick, and I had choices. And so the ones I ended up on were really wonderful companies that did want to leverage your experience. So what I found is you got to be picky and critical, and you now have choices in this other world, who you do, what you do. And so for me, the transition, other than the work of figuring out what it is you want to do, because I said, God, if I could find something I loved as much as being a soldier, that'd be it, but I don't think there's a job out there. So you got to make do, but still find something that you can make a difference and share your leadership experience from the military with these corporations, because they don't have the same kind of professional assignment, professional development. They're kind of business people. I always said, you know, the Army, I know for us, speak for ourselves, we're not very good at business models, and businesses aren't that good at leadership models. That's what we do for a living. And if we could partner and share our leadership model with businesses, they could get programs, which is what I try to do. And if we could leverage their business processes model to be more efficient, it'd be a win-win. So that's what I've been trying to do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I think there's nobody else at the mics, and this is a good time to take a break. General, we want to thank you for traveling all the way here today to Annapolis to speak to us and to share your story. This was tremendous, and as a small token of our appreciation, we wanted to give you our latest Naval Institute Press book, Scales on War, from our Naval Institute Press author, General Scales.
Oh, I know that
who's
man.
there in the third row, U.S. Army, retired.
How many books is this now?
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What an honor. Thanks for this. I look forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to take a break for about 20 minutes, and please come back.